flavor of the day? Afterburner orange.
Bam. Cheers to our first podcast episode. Woohoo!
Take 3.
Okay. Welcome to the Rek'd Podcast. My name's Rae.
And I'm Lars.
And we are so happy to have you guys here. I can't believe we're finally doing this. Hopefully this is the last time we record this. A little bit about why we chose the name Get Rek'd. So we have a company called North Star Rec, and so it's kind of play off of that. And the whole purpose of this podcast is to bring everyone closer to God and start living a life more for God in the way He wants us to live. And that's not an easy process at all. You know, we're going to be 90 years old and still trying to learn and grow and change and be better for God. And it can be pretty difficult to go through these changes and painful, and definitely hurts the ego a little bit. There's tears and frustration and difficulties that come with it, but so you kind of get wrecked along the way, but it's all for good things and all for God. So that's kind of how we came up with the name. And this first section that we're going to be going off of for the next several months is going to be about relationships. Some of it will be more marriage type focused, but some of it won't be. A lot of what we talk about today can be applied to all types of relationships, not just marriage. And it's all based off a book called The Love Dare. And so we're going to talk through the day-to-day sections of the book and give our thoughts and just kind of talk it through and try and learn and grow together. And then eventually I'll be posting little short clips each day of reading each page and posting it so that you guys can follow along as well and maybe take your notes as well as we're posting those clips, and then, you know, put your thoughts in the comments when we post the main podcast episode where we actually dive deep and talk about it. But anything else you want to add?
So really it's just going to be, this is our way of, we're going to talk about the thoughts we had throughout the week and sort of the summary of, you know, what we felt like we learned that week through prayer and meditating on sort of what we're reading. And hopefully by doing this, you know, it'll help us to make it through, because the whole reason this is called the Love Dare, right, is because it's a challenge to take the time, and even just reading one page that has freaking 3 paragraphs on it takes, you know, you actually have to put in the effort. And so it's just an addition. It's another thing that's helping us focus on God's word and, you know, do so in a disciplined manner, not just kind of willy-nilly doing whatever we want.
Right.
So I'm excited, and, you know, this is take 3. We've tried to do this multiple times, but hey, we're new. So
it's a learning process.
If you guys have any advice on what we can do, what kind of equipment or whatever we need to do to make things better, we're all for it. And hopefully as we go through this, we'll grow in, you know, both our capabilities as professionals, but most importantly in our love and understanding how to love more like God. And so with that, do you want to sort of start us off on day 1?
Sure. So day 1 starts off with 1 Corinthians 13, verse 2. If I have all faith so that I can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. So that's the verse it kind of starts off with, and we're really going to be jumping in to this first section being about how to live a life filled with love. And it sounds like that would be easy, but it is truly very difficult. And so I also wanted to jump right off the bat with the prayer for this week. and just kind of get that in everyone's minds and in our hearts and minds as we're going through this. So each week has like a dare that you do, and this week's dare is the prayer. And it says, Lord, teach me what real love is and make me a loving person. And, you know, this really resonates with me because I know that this is something that I do struggle with. You know, I kind of get in these modes where I just am focused on goals and getting all my stuff done for the week, and I know that I specifically don't show you as much love as I would need to, you know, or want to make you feel loved and kind of fill up your cup, so to say. And so this is an area that, even though we've read this week so many times now, I still struggle in this area. So day one, you know, really meditating on that prayer is going to be so important for me because this is an area that I struggle with.
Well, I think we all do, right? I mean, I certainly don't give enough people you know, the grace that God certainly gives me, and, you know, throughout all the things that I have messed up and stuff like that. And I think sort of the thing that I looked at a lot in this is just that, you know, the only way anything really matters in the world is if it's about love.
Yeah.
Right? And we're not just talking like Hollywood Notebook love or whatever, but, you know, actually caring about somebody and choosing to, I'll talk a lot about sort of discipline, like, as, you know, love as a discipline.
Yeah.
And choosing to love someone in spite of maybe not being comfortable with it.
Right.
Or, you know, or maybe they did something that really, really hurt, or that, you know, you really don't know how to forgive them, and choosing to love them anyway. You know, I've had a lot of thoughts based on what we do, right? Sometimes I think about some other things that have happened in the world and stuff like that that we've talked about, and how some people have been harmed or injured or even killed doing some of the stuff that we do by people that are sick. And one of the things that I think about a lot is you got to still love it even through that, right? And you can't, if you lose that, then, I don't know, this has been on my heart, so it's kind of something that I've been wanting to share with you, but no matter how bad things get, you have to sort of keep focusing on what's the actual mission, what's the actual goal that God's trying to, you know, do, what would God do, right? Kind of, what would Jesus do or whatever, but...
no, but really, thinking about that in hard situations.
You know, I mean, it would be really hard, I can imagine, to go back to continuing to help people in certain situations, especially if they hurt somebody you loved, you know, or trusting people beyond that point, right? And that's a lot of what we do, is trusting people to not do unsafe or, you know, dangerous things. Mm-hmm. And no matter what happens, I just hope that, you know, we can keep in perspective that love and continue the mission, even past, like, bad things, you know, if bad things happen or whatever, like, continue doing what we're doing to try to help people and try to, you know, continue down the path that North Star Rec's meant for, right?
Yeah.
And no matter how wrecked we get, right, continue to help people figure out how to live their lives in the best way they can, and do that by, you know, really trying our best to embody Christ's love in what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also wrote down quality of life. So, you know, what does your life look like when you're not leading it with love? Superficial, self-centered, insincere, like, you know, you can do all the good things and say all the good things, but if you're not really coming from a place of love, how does that actually make you feel? You know, there's no meaning in anything that you're doing. And so really trying to embody that and focus on that. You know, it is a choice to try and be loving. Like, I think about things that are difficult at work sometimes, and how if I just took the mindset of being a more loving, understanding person and take that approach to my day, how different it would feel versus just going through the motions because I know that's what I have to do. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It would just change everything.
Well, I think it does. I think you do, a pretty good job with that in spite of some of the people that you end up working with or whatever, and I think one of the cool things about what you do also is that it's sort of shown you how many times have you gone into a house and you're like, again, or, oh man, this is such a problem. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I was totally wrong.
They were lovely.
Yeah,
100%.
So it's one of those, constantly sort of checking you kind of things.
Yeah.
And I think that's been good for us too, to sort of have those conversations and, help us to better have grace for people and understand, hey, some people are just having bad days.
Yeah.
And, or a series of bad days. Mm-hmm. And
it can always change.
That,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I took that, sort of going back to the, what is the ultimate principle? What is the ultimate commandment, which is, love God with all you are and love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah, I put that down too.
As long as that's the goal, as long as that's what you're doing, it's kind of hard to even be worried about anything, right? Yeah. I mean, and not to mention, it just gets rid of so many stressful things that you're always worried about. Like, oh man, I'm worried about interacting with this person this way. Like making new friends or whatever.
Yeah.
And getting out into the community, trying to get people to, everybody's always trying to play this game, relationships or whatever. And I'm sure we'll get more into that as we go. But like everybody's playing a game. And if you just go, you know what? This is how I would want somebody to talk to me. And this is how I wish, how many times do you sit there and you're like, what is this person really thinking?
Yeah.
And so you hold back on what you're saying or whatever. And man, wouldn't it just be easier if you just did everything as if,
right.
they were you, right? And what you would want. You would want them to say this, right, to you or whatever, if that's what they were thinking. And that really solves so many problems. And it's something that I've really been trying to focus on recently, because I've always been so sort of calculating when I, interact with people.
Yeah.
And I'm very that's just sort of the type of person I am, right? Very logic focused or whatever. And trying to make sure, based on what I've done in my life too. And it was always very, you're trying to get that perfect negotiation or whatever, And so, but even then I realized the times that I was most successful in negotiating or working with people was because I was just honest. Yeah. I didn't try to hide anything. I was just like, what do you want? What do I want? And let's go from there, instead of trying to play this bartering game of back and forth. And I feel like when you focus on, Christ's explanation of what is the greatest commandment or what is the commandment, right? When you boil all 10 commandments down to one, what is the commandment? What does it mean? It makes it so simple. Focus on God and just treat people as you would want to be treated.
Yeah.
Done. Right? And it does. It makes me, how many times have we had conversations of who cares what they think? If they think that's on them. That wasn't our intention. We just love them and we want to help them. Or, we just love them and we want them to know or whatever, right? And it solves so many problems. And maybe it's just a cop-out, but I just tell myself that and move on. Right? Yeah. And so, I don't know. That's one of the real big things that I took from day one's sort of, set of paragraphs. And then, just that prayer. Lord, teach me what real love is and make me a loving person. Because I don't think I'm very, a traditionally very loving person.
Yeah.
Right? I'm pretty tough love kind of guy. But sometimes people don't need that. And and I never know what that line is. And so it's been a journey and something I'm trying to learn too.
Yeah.
But so you think we're ready? You got anything more for day day 1, or you want to move on to day 2?
Let's go to day 2.
All right. So love is life's motivation. So what do you take from that?
So in the beginning of that chapter, it was kind of doing these comparisons of like anger versus love, selfishness versus love. And, I wrote down here with a bunch of exclamation marks, love is the most powerful motivator. It's the most powerful emotion. Anger or hatred feels so strong and intense and in that moment, but love is truly the strongest. You would lay down your life for someone because of love. Hatred and anger would never fuel you to do something that sacrificial for someone else. And usually anger and hatred fizzle out.
Yeah.
Love is like this steady, constant, never-ending emotion, and it kind of just builds over time if you're being intentional about it, and you're making that the main focus of your relationship. And I just think that is so incredible. And then it goes on to talk about how God's biggest sacrifice for us came from love. He gave his one and only son who was tortured and died for us. I mean, I can't imagine anyone doing that, sacrificing their child, let alone their perfect child, to save a bunch of sinners, And the only emotion that could ever fuel you enough to sacrifice like that is love.
Yeah.
And so what an even bigger motivator to try and lead your life that way. With always being focused on being a loving individual. And that doesn't mean letting people walk all over you or, being unsafe in certain situations because you're trying to be loving. Loving looks different in every situation, But having that in mind for everything you do completely changes everything. And, like I mentioned earlier, approaching work, or just how you get up in the morning, or how you greet your spouse or friends when you see them, having love in mind, how does that change everything? How does that change what that picture looks like? And it's just really interesting to think about it that way.
Well, and that's like, going back to the discipline thing, right? Like hatred, anger, those are, even greed, right? The other main motivation sort of things you talk about, greed, fear, reward. All of those things are immediate satisfaction, like drills or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And whereas love is this emotion that really requires discipline.
Yeah.
Because you're not always going to be happy with people.
Right.
You're not always going to feel good. You're not always going to be, want to not get in that argument or whatever. But you just got to be like, I got to just do this. And so it's that disciplined choice every single day. I'm going to love you, and I'm going to show that.
And love is not fleeting. These other emotions can come and go quickly. They're like these waves. But love, real love, I think some people misconstrue love for other feelings, like, oh, I'm really happy in this moment. Like, it feels like love, or passion, they twist it and think that's love. That's not love. Real love, it is not fleeting. It's not this quick thing that comes and goes. It's there, and it's, steady, and it's strong, and
yeah, and all those other things can lead to love, but it's a disciplined choice, right? It is the discipline emotion, right? I think. And, the two people I think of the most, right, or probably have talked about the most when it comes to, where I used to work and stuff. The reason they did the things they did were out of love, not out of hatred, not out of anger.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the reason why I still to this day look up to them and think about them regularly when I make choices, or, when I think about how to lead or what the next step is, right? And they were just phenomenally, like the things they did could have never been done.
Right.
Out of hatred or anger or fear. Like, they beat every single one of those things because they loved those they were with that much.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we all understand that too in some ways. Like, why is it that every single hero, or every single good story you hear about, the person always did something? It's never like, it's never like, well, we got this bad guy because we hated them or whatever, right? It's like, no, we got this bad guy because we saved these people.
Yeah.
Or because we helped these people, right? That's what makes, I think we all know that naturally. We all are drawn towards that sort of person in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? And so we understand love in that way. And I think, again, it's that feel good. It'll always feel better that way.
Yeah.
Right? But it's because it's a disciplined emotion, and it takes time and real effort.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's just me because I'm that kind of guy, but my favorite superheroes I don't like them because of what they have, right? Or whatever, or, my favorite stories, I don't like them because of the thing that makes me really appreciate them is because of their ethics, their morals, the way they make decisions in spite of being able to make the very, very, very different decisions.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. And like you said, I mean, the thing about Christ dying for our sins, I don't know. I could get into this forever, and I think we've been talking about day 2 for a good bit, but, maybe it's a good time to start with this because it's sort of the base level understanding that I think a lot of people miss. I certainly missed it for, years and years and years of my life. Is Christ's sacrifice is a big deal, but it's God's sacrifice of his son that makes that even, that's the biggest deal.
Right.
That's the thing that I think we miss, because I think there are plenty of people that are willing to give their own lives for others. I think that's a good, loving thing, and I think that's a powerful thing. But I think it is much, much more moving to imagine that you could stop something from happening. And even though, and I guess the great story is, right, that Christ is going to rise up again 3 days later, right? You're like, yep, he's going to die, it's going to suck, he's going to go down, and he's going to beat death. But then he's going to come right back up because he's going to beat death, right? Mm-hmm. And so maybe there's a little less there, but I still could never watch somebody, we only have dogs, right? We don't have any kids yet, but I couldn't watch somebody harm our dogs. Mm-mm. I couldn't do it if I couldn't stop them.
I couldn't even watch them harm our chickens.
I couldn't do it if I could stop them. If I couldn't stop them, I mean. Mm-hmm. But if I could, there was no question that I could stop it from happening, right? It would never happen.
Yeah.
I would stop it every single time. I'm just not, I don't have that kind of love for people.
Yeah.
Right? And knowing that then I'd sit here and I live this life and certainly not perfect and I'm constantly doing all these stupid things, right? Or have done all these stupid things throughout my life. And man, how much somebody loved me that, God loved me that much.
Yeah.
That he was like, you're going to keep screwing up, but that's okay. I love you that much. And I think once you're a parent, I think you can maybe understand this even better. We'll find out one day or whatever. But yeah, that's powerful. And I think whenever I think about love, I go, I guess this is not that big of a deal, right? I'm like, ooh, I don't really want to do this, but it does help sort of change my perspective on actions we may do or whatever.
Yeah. And, sometimes I try to approach a situation with love and it's not really there in me. I'm trying, but I'm not actually feeling it deep down. But the hope is with practice and being mindful and aware of it, that someday in those harder situations, the little bit of love feeling will be there, even when it's challenging.
Well, that's the discipline thing, right? I mean, we know psychologically, right? Even scientifically, we know that the more you control your responses to things,
Yeah.
the more self-control you have. And the less likely you are to get upset about that thing again or whatever. Mm-hmm. But every time you let that outburst occur, every time you take that immediate satisfaction of, I'm angry, so I'm going to yell, or I'm angry, so I'm going to, have an outburst or whatever, you're giving into it and you're not actually growing at all.
Yeah.
And
you're reinforcing that in your neural pathways that, oh, when I feel this is my body response, adrenaline rush, yelling, heart rate goes up, like all of the things, your body is like, oh, okay, so when I feel this, now this is what I'm supposed to do.
And that's sort of that like undisciplined, weak response, in my personal opinion. Like, I want to know that I have the control over that, right? And even better, I want to know that I don't even rise to that level. And the only way I'm going to do that is continuing to like sort of flex that muscle, right?
Yeah.
And love, again,
train it.
The disciplined love is that ultimate sort of goal.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think we've hit pretty hard on day 2. What are your thoughts on day 3? So love is the key.
Yes. So this one is a little bit more about marriage. I put love as the most important ingredient for a successful marriage. A lot of people get wrapped up into finances, even sex life, all different sorts of things become these pillars in your marriage, when really, if the foundation is about love, all those other things, when they fall apart, because they will at some point, it won't have such a destroying effect on your marriage. I think we would see much less divorce if people chose love and put these other things lower on the importance level, and really focused on, how do I make my spouse feel loved? Not how do I think I should love them? How do I think they want to be loved? And be intentional about that and make that, the priority of your marriage. Things would just look so different. And I, touched on this later, but I'll go ahead and just talk about it now, is I feel like you and I have been very lucky in how our relationship started and has grown. Quick backstory, Lars is paralyzed from the chest down. So what you can't see is he's in a wheelchair. But so we met 1 year after he got injured, and we were friends first for a little while, but knew immediately that we were going to be together. I mean, I literally called my mom the day that I met him and told her that I just met this guy and he was going to be in my life for the rest of my life. So yada yada, long story short, you and I, because of your injury, experienced a lot of really difficult things right away. And I think God really had his hand on our relationship, because we both handled all of those things so well, somehow, by the grace of God, things that I feel like...
Relative to probably the way most people would, yeah.
Yeah, but... So I think from the get-go, though, we did have that love as the center of our relationship, because some of those other things that would be a main focus, especially early on in people's relationships, literally were not able to be a focus for us,
Well, so hopefully I'm not, cutting you off too quickly, but one of the things that sort of you've sparked, when I took some notes on it real quick while you were talking, is that I think the reason why it was so successful is we had to spend our time in things that weren't necessarily immediately satisfaction focused.
Yeah.
Right? When we first started talking, we weren't even in the same states.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not like travel was super easy for me at that time either, right? I mean, I hadn't traveled on my own yet at that point since I'd been paralyzed.
Yeah.
Right? and I needed to so that I could go back to work and stuff like that. But it was, we were limited.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, because of where we had just sort of come from in our own lives and our, other relationships and stuff, we didn't have the ability. All of our time was more focused on things that mattered, conversations about who we, like our thoughts, our beliefs, stuff we were doing, instead of about the things that are, provide that sort of immediate satisfaction that's super easy to get now, you know, especially with the way cell phones are and whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, not to mention, it just wasn't a really good reality. Like, it wasn't reality for us, right? To have those really quick sort of, a lot of people
we weren't really ever those like, oh, fun date, da 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 kind of people. We're like very deep individuals. Like when someone or something matters, we pretty much dive all in and want to have those real life conversations. And that was super important right off the bat because we knew that this was something serious.
But we were also forced to do that, right? Which helped because it wasn't like we could do these things like, oh, this is going to be a fun date, right? So we get that immediate satisfaction in the hour or whatever, like, oh, we're excited.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like that. We didn't have that opportunity. It was a constant, okay, I'm going to keep in touch with this person. I'm going to talk to them. And it's not that we didn't want to.
Right.
But, okay, what are we going to talk about next kind of thing, right? Instead of it being, that like, oh, you're so pretty, or, like, you're so funny. I mean, like, that's how so many conversations go, right? It's just some crap and I don't know, at least me, I was a stupid kid. But like, all my other relationships, like, oh, you're so pretty, or you're whatever, like, and that's the probably the vast majority of conversations I have with people or whatever, right? And it's like
with your girlfriends.
Well, yeah, okay, whatever.
Everyone Lars meets, he's like, I'm like,
you're so
pretty.
No, but yeah, like, that's the conversation piece in the relationship instead of really being forced into, oh man, like, if I want to talk to this person, I should probably have something of substance to talk about.
Yeah.
So what is it, right? Not just my day-to-day, but hey, how do I get them to know who I am? And some of that was also because, look, at that time, I was terrified. I mean, my whole life, my whole world has always been like, it doesn't matter who you were yesterday. It's who you are today. And if you're not doing it today, then you don't
really matter anymore.
Right? And so for me, it sucked because I couldn't do a lot of the things that I used to be able to do.
Yeah.
But so many of those things were me, right? I mean, I spent 10 years of my life dedicated solely to a single craft, right? And now all those things, which are so me and, just fit who I was and still are very much me, right? And dictate a lot of the way I interact with people and how I talk and all of these different things. And now I'm in this situation where, how do I do it without talking about what I did yesterday?
Yeah.
Right? Or how do I do it without being that, like, the guy sitting at the bar, like, oh, I used to do this, right? I didn't want to be that person. And so that meant that I had to be very proactive in, our interactions and very proactive in like, hey, this is sort of what I think and why. And, and I think that really helped. Mm-hmm. But I guess I totally got off track on kind of what I was going for. But one of the ways, all of that was a way that showed, that we developed sort of that discipline, right, towards love and focusing on that instead of the immediate satisfaction things. And then, and the way I sort of noticed that is where you put your money. I don't know if this is a thing other people say or whatever, but where you put your money is where you're going to put your worth, right? And so one of the easiest ways to sort of start developing that love muscle or whatever, like start developing that discipline, is I am going to put my money towards this person. I'm going to get them a gift, right? And it doesn't have to be, it's that it does alter you psychologically to think about that person in a different way, right? Because we do, for whatever reason, human beings care a lot about where we put our finances, probably because it has to do with, how we live and whatever. But it really helps to alter your focus. If you're spending all your money and all your time on your car, that's what you love and that's what you look forward to doing.
Yeah.
Right? So if you then go, I'm going to take some money that I would normally put towards my car, and I'm going to put it towards getting some nice flowers.
Yeah.
Or, getting you a nice gift, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it's funny because you give me grief because I'm always getting you stuff or whatever. And you're like, I don't need things. And I'm like, I know, I need to get you things, right? That's the reality, because it helps me to keep my discipline towards you. Yeah. Right? And it helps me to not, because we do, spend a lot of stuff on the business, right? And things like that. And I love it. And it is a huge goal. And I think it's very important. But I need to make sure that I don't get lost in that, because I can very easily get lost in work. I know I can. Like, I did it for most of my life. So instead of doing that, I go, okay, reconnect real quick. Let's get Ray a gift, right? Or whatever. And I don't know. I feel like I'm much better around those periods of time, than when I'm not.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like for me personally, it's much more of sacrifice and like intentional feeling is when I give my time to people. Because for me, I don't really buy a lot of stuff anyways. I kind of just save and, whatever. But for me, my personal time has always been so important. I would choose to not go hang out or go out with friends because I wanted to stay in and recharge and do what I wanted to do for me. Right. And so my way of being more loving towards others is giving my time. Choosing to go help someone with something versus doing whatever else I wanted to do for me. That's my intentional way of loving. I thought that was a door opening. But yeah, I just wanted to put that in there, that for some people it may not be money. The sacrifice may be time or, something else. But I get what you were getting at of...
Well, and I think, like, finance is just such a simple way to do it, though, too, right? Like, because finances are a part of our everyday, right? Like, yeah, I think I get a lot more disciplined. Like, it's a harder workout, so to speak, when I do something that I don't normally do very well, right? Or that is, like, doing the laundry or whatever is not easy for me. So, yeah, that, like, task, doing that for you is certainly, like, I think it develops that discipline a little easier. But just like I've sort of said a lot and really started understanding, is like, you've got to start. Yeah. Right? All you need to do is start. Once you start, things will get easier, right? And discipline, like, the finance thing is so simple. I buy you $5 worth of flowers or something, and it's like, it wasn't a big deal. But I started. I took that tiny step. Right, and that's why it's kind of easy. Like, that's why I do it sometimes, because it helps me to do the other things. Right, getting you I don't know. You don't need candy, but whatever. Like, getting you a nice like treat or something, and be like, here, I got you a Built Bar flavor or something for you to try. Like, you don't care at all. I mean, you do, but not like, it's not a big deal to you. Yeah. But it's like, okay, I flipped that switch. I took, I lifted that weight just one more, I took one more step. Yeah. And even though it's not really anything, no one's going to notice. It's 1 inch, whatever. No one's going to notice. But over a period of time, that'll grow, right? I still flex that muscle a little bit. Yeah. You have anything else for day 3 or? No. All right, day 4. So day 4, love simplifies. This one's actually really simple for me. I think it's pretty quick.
I agree. Thank God. I didn't have much.
Just because we don't want to make this too long.
Yeah.
But I think, this is a pretty simple thing. Like, what would you do for yourself? That's my question, right? What would I do? And we already sort of talked about this on day 1 or 2 or whatever, but simple. The simplest thing I can ask, should I do this? And I go, would I want me to do that? Would I want somebody to do that for me?
Yeah.
Or would I want, if X were to occur, what would I want to happen?
Yeah. And what I took
Done.
from day 4, all I'm going to say about it is when you lead with love, it cancels out all the other negative things that you may instinctively try to do. Like, it cancels out you being sinful, you being hateful, you being selfish, you being manipulative. If you lead with love, those things can't happen. You know what I mean? So it's not easy to make love your instinct, but flexing that muscle, hopefully with time, will make it more of your first response and make it easier.
Well, and I think eventually, it does become your sort of sympathetic response, right? You just do it. Like,
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yep. Go ahead. It's like doing a chore or whatever. Like, eventually down the road, you're just like, oh, I'm just doing it. I don't even notice anymore.
Yeah.
Or riding my bike or whatever. Like, started out, could barely do it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Now I can do it for hours, right?
Yeah.
So again, simplifies everything, makes it really easy. And that was sort of just day 4, and I like that though. It was good. Day 5, love is the business of men. And I already know you're going to say, because you're going to be like, I think you should talk about this, but what were your thoughts on it?
So I actually just wanted to read the last paragraph and just kind of leave that with people because I think it's so good. So why don't you say what you have, and then I'll read that, and then we'll...
So the first thing that I took was the 2 Timothy verse 1:7, which is, God has not given us a spirit of fearfulness, but one of power, love, and sound judgment. And that's a huge guidepost, and I think a really important, piece of scripture to remember. Because if you're doing something out of fear, it's not the right reason, right? It's probably not what you're supposed to be doing, right? If you're doing it out of, or your motivation or whatever, right? You are powerful, you've got love, and you're going to have sound judgment if you're moving that direction. If you're doing it out of fear, it's probably not the right thing, right? And so, it's not coming from God if it's fear-based, right, or whatever. But going back to sort of the title, The Business of Men, I think that's a really... I think that, the main business of men is leadership, right? And I don't just mean like men, males, but people in general, like everybody's a leader. You just don't know where or how, right?
Yeah.
Even if you're the lowest person on the totem pole, if you're executing properly, everybody around you is going to get better or fall away, right? And so you're still leading, whether you realize it or not. And I think that's why this love is the business of men is such a big deal to me, because going back to all the other things we've said up to this point, if love is the main focus, then you're going to have a successful business, right? And you're going to be successful as a leader, as in your relationship, in your life, whatever, right? If that's your main focus. So make it your business, and you're going to be just fine. You're going to have power. You're going to have sound judgment, right? And then, it sort of talks about, and it says specifically, love makes a man a man. It makes them responsible, makes them lead, and makes them put away many of the childish things. The line specifically that I really liked is, it makes men do boldly what boys only dream of.
Yeah.
And that is so powerful to me because that's 100% true.
Yeah.
How many people do we know, right, that are boys, or whatever? They think they're men. They talk about all these big things. I think specifically of somebody like at jiu-jitsu, right? And like,
I'm not even sure who you're talking about, but okay.
you will. So,
oh yeah.
you know, like they talk about all these big things and they dream of these massive things, right? How many people play untold numbers of video games or whatever, right? And they're like, man, I really wish I could do that. And don't get me wrong, totally understand, you know, but you only, to step into that arena, that's a completely different person.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to have the type of person, like, boys won't step into that arena. They can't.
Yeah.
They'll just dream of it. And they'll talk about it. And they'll do all of that, right? And they're going to be, you know, yeah, this is my dream or whatever. And they're going to try to make you believe that that's what it is. And that's who they are. But until they step into the arena, and they're doing so with love, right? And taking that responsibility, taking that discipline, you won't step into it. You just won't. Because you're gonna quit, right?
The other motivations behind it will not be strong enough to carry you through that.
Absolutely not. You know, I mean, one of my best friends, like, who made it through some of the craziest, people would, you know, talk about how crazy some of this stuff is. And the dude couldn't freaking finish two-a-day football practice because he was too hard. But when he finally took the step years later, the thing that motivated him the most was his love for his mom. And he knew that he was going to have this thing that could change his mom's life at the end.
Yeah. And
that helped him push through in spite of everything.
Yeah.
Right? And so, you know, it's all those little things, or, you know, I mean, the two people that I was talking about earlier that sort of I think about all the time, and their sort of sacrifices and experiences. And man, they did it out of love. And I don't know, there's no way you can not call them men, right? Like, that's a man. Like, you look at them and you're like, yep, done. And the funny thing is about them, you also probably would never be like, oh, you wouldn't, it's not that stereotype, right? That like Hollywood diehard, you know, sort of stereotype of, they're not those type of people
Macho
either.
Man.
They just love. They're full of love.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and the one I know a little more closely, right? I mean, you'd never know that dude is just a straight, you know, inhuman, like, beast, right? And he just loves God, and that's his main focus. And if you met him today, you'd never know he did the things he's done.
Yeah.
You know, but probably one of the craziest human beings I've ever met, as far as, like, you know, just love and capability and discipline. And it's all because he made love his business, right? That's what made him really good.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Shall I read the paragraph that I really like?
Yep.
Okay. Jesus was the most loving man ever to walk the earth and remains the perfect example of manhood. With passion, he confronted evil, cast out demons, and rebuked religious hypocrites. Out of love, he served sacrificially, rescued the brokenhearted, and willingly died for the sins of the world. Real men embrace this love as the driving force to boldly do what boys merely dream of. So, to think of Jesus, you know, I think of this just perfect, most loving human being. And I think the world today paints a different picture of what a man is, you know, what being manly looks like. But truly, the most manly man to have ever walked is Jesus. You know, and yeah, that's all.
Well, that's not to say, like, you know, I mean, I think a lot of people forget that, like, Jesus wasn't a pushover either, right? That's not what it means.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, literally walks in, sees a bunch of people, like, screwing with the temple, and he starts flipping tables.
Yeah.
You know, he's freaking yelling at people. He's like, no, this is straight up, this is completely wrong, and I'm going to fix it.
Yeah.
Right? And he's not, you know, I mean, he's not a coward. He's not, but he also knows that a lot of his positions, the most important thing he could do is show people love. And so there's still that tough love part in there, right? But there's so much more to it than that. And I think that we can't lose all of those facets. I mean, even if you just go back to the Old Testament, right? How many times is God really harsh?
Yeah.
Right? And you're kind of like, whoa, is this the same thing? Is this what I'm, but it's out of love too, right?
Yeah.
Because if you eat this product, you don't have the right way to clean it right now. You don't have the right way to, cook it. So you're gonna die, right? So don't do it. Keep it out completely.
Yeah.
Or you go after these things, you're gonna die, or you're gonna get lost in these, immediate pleasure focus, right? And you're not gonna be able to accomplish the things you should accomplish. And so there's so much to it. It's multifaceted, right? But it's all out of love. I want you to be the best person you can be. And the only way I can do that is by, there's a bunch of different ways I can do that. And for every situation, it's different. But the focus is always love. And I think that, that's the thing to focus on. Okay, so day 6. Tell me about day 6.
So
love is your job description.
Yeah. I wrote down, what is something all people desire? It does not matter who you are, what your abilities are, what language you speak, where you grew up. It does not matter. Every single person to their core just desires to be loved.
Hi, buddy.
Hi, Cheek.
Coming to be part of the video.
You can't see him, but our dog's right here. There's his ears. Hi, Cheech. How you doing? So,
Lay down, buddy.
I just think that is such a cool thing. That we can go to a different country where people don't even speak the same language, nothing. But there is some way we could communicate love to them, and whether through actions or even just facial expressions. But at the end of the day, that's all people want. And I just wrote down a question. How often do you think about intentionally making your spouse, friends, family feel loved? How often do people actually do that? Like, I feel like there's times where I'm like, oh, I think this would make so-and-so happy. Like when I see something that makes me think of them or whatever, so I'll get it or I'll do it or whatever. But like, I never sit down and think about how would this make my friend feel? How could I make my friend feel loved? How could I make you feel loved? And so that's just something I want to kind of encourage more people to do. Because the more intentional thought we put into this stuff, the more we're flexing that muscle, right? So that's mainly what I got.
Yeah, so...
And I also wanted to read the last sentence in prayer, but I'll wait till after you say that stuff.
Yeah, so... everyone wants to be loved. We've already kind of talked about a lot of this, and when going through this. And that's the great thing about this book is it really builds, right, on the whole concept of love.
Yeah.
But the resistance, Stephen Pressfield, War of Art concept, but I really like it, gathered it, and I think it's a great thought process. But the resistance is basically anything that wants us to not be the best we can be. And you can call that, the devil, laziness, mental health issues, whatever, right? Whatever it is. That's why I like calling it the resistance, because it kind of fills all those gaps, right? But the resistance wants you to think those immediate satisfaction things are the answer, right? Yeah. There's a million different answers. Oh, you just need this thing. You just need X, Y, and Z. If you go do this, you're going to feel great, right? And you will for that second, but you immediately lose it.
Yeah.
When I was not as, not that I'm a good person now, but when I was a stupid kid, there were plenty of times I would do something and then I'd immediately feel regret, right? Or I'd immediately be like, dang it,
Yeah.
And that's that conscience, that's the Holy Spirit sort of, working through us and telling us, hey man, that's not the right answer.
Right.
But every time you give into it, you're empowering the resistance. You're letting it win that fight instead of you winning the fight by flexing that muscle, that, discipline muscle or whatever, right? Like, no, I'm not going to eat those freaking donuts.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to go lift.
We're going to have to make a t-shirt about like...
Flex that muscle or something.
My brain went to flex your love muscle, but I was like, no. That's bad.
Oh, no.
So we're going to have to come up with something else.
But it's completely different when it deals with love, right? Every time you do something out of love, even if it doesn't go properly, if you really did it out of love, you're like, well, it didn't work, but at least I tried.
Yeah.
And it feels okay. I cannot think of a single time I've ever done something out of love that I then felt bad about after.
Yeah.
Right? Or
you can feel like, well, that didn't go how I thought. I've certainly had that happen, but I don't feel that like guilt or shame or, any of those things. It's like, boy, I really thought that was going to go better, lesson learned, but.
Well, and it's not that you feel bad about the action. It's like just something that happened, tangent to it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. You like to try to get me nice, you're like, I got you 2 burgers today. And I'm like, oh, sweet. And then there's like half a burger in there somehow. Like somebody messed something up or whatever. Like, and it had nothing to do with you. Like, and I know every time you're like, dang it. And you're so disappointed. But like, it wasn't you that messed it up or whatever. Like, you had love and you were just trying to do something nice for me because you thought I'd like it or whatever, and that just happened like literally 2 days ago. That's why it's on my mind. But, so I think the biggest thing is like every time you're doing that disciplined action, every time you are of making love the reason, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And again, love simplifies, right? So if you're doing it out of love, easy, done.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I liked, one of the other parts that I picked up is when they deserve your love the least is when they need it the most. Mm-hmm. That's the line that I really took from that a lot because it's, specific to me, right, is there was a period of time where I wasn't doing so good because of my injury and so on, right, and just other things that were happening in life because of it all. And I don't think I was a very good person. I really disliked that part of my life, that period of time.
Can I just say real quick, it's so funny that line sticks out to you because, I read it and I totally get what it's saying. Like, it's like, yeah, I agree with that. But to me, you're like always perfect to the point where it's like annoying. And I'm like, God, can you just get a little attitude with me or something? So for me, that was so not applicable to like you and how I feel about you and our relationship and stuff. But it's funny that you picked it out about yourself, but I totally don't feel that way about you. Like, I get irritated that you are always so great, and I'll have moments where I might get a little attitude-y or something, and he just gives me so much grace, never gets attitude back, is still loving and sweet, and I'm just like, well, now I feel even crappier.
That's not, I'm not that, no, but I'm not that great. But she's just got a lot of love and grace for me, and she just doesn't realize it. But, that was such a big deal to me.
Sigurd, stop licking.
Quit licking, buddy.
Go boy. No.
You're going to hear him licking in the background. We apologize. But the thing that really sort of, you kept, you had my back through it all. And that was a really big deal because I needed that. Like, I don't think I would have come out as well without that. And then all these other decisions I've made from that point to get to the point where we're doing pretty well and we're really, really blessed.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
It helped because
it was
you made
easy,
it better to go that way.
but it was easy because I know who you are, you know? Because I think we all go through seasons. I mean, just the other week, I was feeling all kinds of crazy and just not like myself, you know? But you know who I am, and you knew that the things I was going through and kind of feeling like I should do were not me. And so same thing when you were kind of struggling, I knew that was not you. So it was easy to kind of...
Yeah, I mean, but I also just don't think, man, you have so much love, and God has blessed you with so much, like, you're just a really loving, awesome person in that way. And, I know you don't feel like that all the time, and I know you don't feel like you're really great at it necessarily. I mean, again, definitely not at God levels, right? Like, either of us, but like, that's the journey, and that's the purpose of this, right? So a year from now, when we finish this, right, it's the 365 version of the Love Dare. Hopefully we will have grown, and then we'll have developed, that sort of disciplined focus of,
It's driving me nuts. Sigurd, stop licking.
But, we'll have developed that and be to the point that we will be better, and we'll continue to have those tools. We'll gather tools from this that will help us grow.
Shall I read the last line in prayer?
Yep.
Okay, the last line of this chapter is, no one on earth is more strategically positioned, commanded, and called on to love your mate than you are. And I just think that is the most awesome thing ever to think about. We're all part of God's army, and he has different roles, several roles for every single one of us, but to know that one of my roles is to love you, be your wife the best that I can. I just think that is so awesome to think about. And then the prayer is, Lord, I thank you for the spouse you have given me. Teach me to love them in a way that meets their needs and honors you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So I think that's a really good prayer. And, the two prayers throughout this week, I mean, I'm encouraged to pray them over and over and over again. Yeah. Because these are areas that I need to continue growing in. It's not like, prayer once and then this guy I like to watch, Vlad, what does he say? Like, pray until something happens. Don't just pray one time about the thing you want to happen. You keep praying on it until it happens. And so meditating and praying on these things, you don't stop until you get to where you want to be. All right, day 7. I don't think I had that much for day 7, to be honest.
Yeah, so day 7 is love is fertile soil. And being rooted and grounded in love is, Ephesians 3:17 is sort of the focus. And again, great place to end week 1. Set down the foundation of, if everything you do, you need to root everything you do in love. Your whole relationship, your sheep need to be grounded. So, flying sheep, bad. But I think that's super important, right? If the soil's not fertile, no matter how much you try, how hard you work, how much you water the plants, whatever you do, it's not going to matter. It doesn't have the nutrients to grow. And with love being the main focus, no matter how many times you run into problems, right? No matter how many weeds get in there, right? Weeds kill things because they take from the soil, right? So it's no longer fertile.
Yeah.
If you don't, it doesn't matter. Bring on all the weeds, right? If you've got enough love, it's not going to matter. You're still going to grow. You're still going to do well.
Yeah.
And I like that concept and sort of looking at that. And the thing that I took from it was at the end, what does it say? Like months from now or something like that. will you read the questions at the end?
That's what I was going to read.
Okay.
All the questions. So there's a bunch of questions at the end to just kind of consider. It says, how will your mate be affected by living with you in the future? Will they become radiant or saddened, confident or angry? Mail trucks here. Will you dare to create a loving environment for your spouse to grow in? So those are all the questions.
Yeah, and I think, like, again, it's all about tools, right? So we've got 2 prayers now, and now these questions to ask ourselves, you know, and really give you a good perspective on how am I doing, right? And that's what I like about these questions is, like, how am I doing on this? Is this, and again, going back to simplifying it all, right? Am I doing things in the right direction? Are we growing? Are we doing this? And that's why we're doing this, right?
Yeah.
That's why we want to start this podcast and sort of start out with the Love Dare 365. One, because it's great. We've got 52 weeks worth of, you know, stuff going for us. But also because it'll help us to be disciplined, right? And have one more thing that keeps us accountable, one more thing that keeps us moving on the path. And, you know, hopefully learning from others too, because we're certainly not perfect. We don't know everything.
That's why we're doing this.
Yeah. You know, it's as much as we'd like to think that we're mature and, you know, God and God's love and whatever, like, we're still children, right?
Speak for yourself. I feel like I have so much learning and growing to do.
No, that's what I'm saying. As much as we'd like to be mature, right? Like, and feel like, oh, I'm a full-grown adult and I'm great. Like, not even close, right?
Yeah.
And so much to learn, so much to grow from. And, you know, I mean, in spite of being together for, you know, what?
Almost 6 years.
6 years now. Like,
yeah.
We're still new. We're still figuring this out, you know, in a lot of ways. And there's still things, life is constantly changing. Our life has changed quite a bit recently, right?
Yeah.
And we're still learning how to deal with that. And every day we're learning something new, you know, so
yeah,
that's why we're here and that's what we're looking forward to doing. And
yeah. Let us know if there's any kind of specific topics you guys want us to cover down in the comments. You know, I'm sure in the future we'll have more time and we can make extra videos around other topics as we continue going through the Love Dare. But yeah, so just let us know if there's anything in particular you want us to talk about. And anything else?
No, just, you know, thanks, and make sure you come back and get wrecked.
Thank you guys. Make it a great day.